The planet Varna looked quiet from space. Red mountains stretched for miles. White clouds floated above green valleys. It was a peaceful view. Darren sat alone in the small landing shuttle. Called Driftlight, he was not a soldier or a commander. He was just a technician. His job was to check systems, repair broken tools, and collect ground samples. His team had stayed on the main ship in orbit. Only he had come down for this part of the mission. The shuttle had landed safely in an open field near the base of a rocky hill. Darren stepped outside wearing a thin suit and helmet. The air on Varna was safe to breathe but full of dust. He moved slowly, scanning the ground with his small hand device. He took a few samples, marked the location, and looked at the hills nearby. There was silence. No birds, no wind, only the sound of his own breath in the helmet. Darren turned to return to the shuttle when something moved on top of the ridge. At first, he thought it was a shadow. Then it stood, a tall figure wrapped in silver and bronze armor, holding a long spear. The armor was smooth and sharp. The face was covered by a mask with two glowing eyes. The figure did not move. It only watched. Darren froze. He had no weapon, no way to call for help quickly. The ridge was too high for him to run. He raised his hands to show he meant no harm. The figure tilted its head, then took one step forward. The spear rose. No, Darren said quietly, please wait. But the figure moved faster than he expected. With one strong motion, the spear was thrown toward him. It cut through the air like a bolt of lightning. Darren reacted without thinking. His hand shot out. The spear landed in his palm. He stumbled back, shocked. The weapon was heavy but balanced. His hand stung from the force. He looked up, expecting another attack. Instead, the figure dropped to one knee. Darren blinked. What just happened? The armored warrior placed a hand on her chest and bowed her head. More figures appeared from behind the ridge. They walked slowly. Some carried weapons, others wore robes. One of them, older and taller, raised a hand. Darren stood still, holding the spear. The old figure spoke. The voice was deep but calm. The words were not in English, but something else, smooth and rolling, like wind over stone. The first warrior stood again. She walked down the ridge and stopped in front of Darren. She removed her mask. Her face was strong, with lines like markings, drawn by hand. Her eyes were dark green, and her skin had a soft bronze glow. She looked at him with calm eyes, not angry, not scared. Then she pointed at the spear in his hand and placed her hand on her own chest again. Darren spoke. Softly, I didn't mean to challenge you. She tilted her head, not understanding. The older figure came closer. He carried a small round device. It blinked with soft lights. He placed it on the ground. A moment later, the device spoke in a rough voice. You caught the weapon, it said. She is now yours. Darren stepped back. What? The device spoke again. You accepted the challenge. You caught her spear. You proved yourself. She belongs to you. I don't want her to belong to me. Darren said. The warrior looked confused. She said something in her own language. The device translated. You showed great skill. You did not run. You accepted the strike. Now the bond is made. Darren shook his head. There must be a mistake. I didn't know about any bond. The old figure walked closer. He looked into Darren's eyes. Then he placed a hand on the spear. Gently, he guided Darren's hand to return it to the warrior. She did not take it. Instead, she pushed it back to him, then knelt again. Darren felt the weight of eyes all around him. The other Varnans watched in silence. He sighed. He could not fight them. He could not explain something they did not believe. Right now, all he could do was follow. The older one pointed toward the mountains and spoke again. You will come. You must meet the council. Darren looked back at his shuttle. It waited quietly in the open field. I need to tell my ship, he said. The old one nodded and pointed again. You will speak. Then we walk. Darren walked back to the shuttle and sent a short message. He told his team he had made contact with a local group and was safe for now. He would follow them and try to learn more when he returned. The warrior stood at the front of the group. She still watched him with quiet eyes. There was no hate in her gaze, only duty. As they began walking toward the hills, Darren glanced at the spear in his hand. He had caught it without thinking, a moment of instinct. But now that moment had changed everything. He had no idea what the bond meant, no idea where this road would lead. But he walked with them anyway. Behind him, the shuttle stayed quiet under the red sky. Ahead, the mountain shadows grew longer. The warrior walked at his side. The path through the hills was long and narrow. Sharp rocks lined the sides, and strange plants with glowing blue tips grew between cracks. The group walked in silence. Only the sound of their footsteps and the wind could be heard. Darren stayed near the front, just behind the tall warrior who had thrown the spear at him. Her armor moved quietly. She walked with purpose, never looking back, never slowing down. The sun was low in the sky when they reached the village. It was built into the side of a mountain. Stone houses stood in circles, and tall banners waved in the wind. Fires burned in deep pits, giving off soft orange light. People came out to see the new visitor. They stood in silence as Darren entered. With the group, children hid behind elders. Some pointed at the spear still in his hand. Others bowed their heads. The old man from before raised his hand, and the crowd moved aside. He led Darren to the center of the village, where a wide circle of flat stone waited. Carvings of warriors and beasts surrounded the space. There, 3 figures stood waiting. One wore long green robes, another held a thick wooden staff. The third was tall and thin, with pale skin and clear eyes. The old man bowed to them and spoke in his language. Darren listened quietly, trying to understand. After a few minutes, the one with the staff turned to him. A small silver device hung around his neck. It blinked and spoke in broken English. "You are the outsider," it said. "You caught the spear. Now you hold the bond." Darren nodded slowly. "I didn't know what it meant. I only reacted. I didn't want to start a fight." The translator clicked again. "You caught it. That is enough. The law is old. It does not care about reason. It only sees action." The tall warrior, Raka, stepped forward and bowed to the council. She spoke calmly, without emotion. The translator shared her words. "I threw the spear. He caught it. The bond is sealed. I am his until the bond is broken." Darren looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to be mine." He said, "I didn't come here to take anyone. I'm just a technician." The council whispered to each other for a moment. Then the one in robes spoke. "You did not choose, but the law chose for you. She is a warrior of the flame. Her strength is known. Her name is Raka. She follows you now. You are her bond." Darren lowered the spear. "What does that mean? What happens now?" The staff holder stepped forward. "You must respect our law. The bond cannot be broken unless she defeats you in combat or you give your life to save hers. If neither happens, she remains yours." Raka said nothing. She stood tall and still, like a statue. Darren felt the weight of the moment. He had not come for this. He only wanted to collect samples and leave. But now he was part of something much older and stronger than him. The council gave him a small stone necklace. The pendant showed the shape of a spear and a flame. They told him to wear it always while inside their land. It marked him as a bond master. The villagers prepared a small room for him inside one of the stone houses. It was simple, with a bed made of soft leaves and a clay bowl for water. Raka stayed outside, sitting near the door. That night, Darren could not sleep. He looked up at the rocky ceiling and listened to the sounds of the village soft wind, crackling, fire, and the distant howl of an animal. He stepped outside and found Raka still awake. She sat by the fire with her spear across her knees. Her eyes were fixed on the flames. "Do you want to be free?" Darren asked. She looked at him but didn't answer right away. "I follow the law," she said. "I threw the spear. I lost. You caught it. I obey. But do you want this?" he asked again. Raka stood slowly. She pointed to the mountains in the distance. "My people follow strength. If I take back the spear, I lose honor. If I fight the bond, I shame my clan. If I obey, I keep my place. That is my choice." Darren sat beside the fire. "Back on my world, People don't belong to each other like this. We choose who we follow. Raka looked at him. Now you must choose how you lead. Some command with fear. Others lead with honor. We will see what kind you are. She said nothing more and returned to her place near the door. The next day, Darren was shown around the village. He saw warriors training with wooden spears and children learning to climb the rock walls. He offered to help repair broken tools, using his small device. He fixed a water pipe and repaired a light panel near the food house. The people watched him with growing interest. Later, the council called him again. There's a test coming, they said. A battle with a rival clan. Raka was our best fighter, but now she is yours. The rival clan may attack soon. Darren felt the weight grow heavier. What do you want me to do? You must decide, they said. You keep her. You lose her strength. You give her back. And you break the bond. He looked at Raka, who stood behind him with silent eyes. She had made no complaint, no request. Darren took a deep breath. Let me think. He returned to his room that night, unsure of what to do. He had come to fix machines and study rocks. But now, he held the future of a warrior and maybe an entire village in his hands. The flame of the bond had been lit. What he did next would shape everything. The sky above the village of Varna turned darker as clouds gathered near the mountain peaks. The cold wind blew through the stone houses. Fires were lit early that day, and warriors trained harder than usual. Everyone could feel it. The storm was coming, not just from the sky, but from the enemy clan. Raka stood on a flat rock outside the village, her spear resting across her shoulders. Her armor shone in the fading light. She had trained here many times before, but now she only watched. She was no longer allowed to lead the warriors in drills. She was bound to Darren now, and by law. She could not take part in clan battles unless her bond master allowed it. Darren stood behind her, watching in silence. He had come to speak with her, but he waited. Raka always moved with calm focus, like every motion had meaning. After a few moments, she turned to him. You are quiet, she said. I'm thinking, he answered. She nodded. That is better than speaking without purpose. Darren walked closer. You were their leader. Now they train without you. Do you agree with that? Raka looked toward the training circle. It is the law. I follow it. But what do you want? Darren asked. Raka lowered her eyes. I want to fight. I want to protect my people. That is my place. But the bond has changed that. Darren sat on a nearby stone. I don't want to control you. I never did. I don't even know how this law truly works. But they told me if I let you fight again, the bond will be broken. Raka stepped down from the rock and sat across from him. Yes, she said, if I fight in battle by my own will, the bond ends. You lose me. Darren looked at the necklace with the flame symbol that still hung around his neck. Is that what you want? Raka was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before. When I first saw you, I thought you were weak. No weapon, no armor, no challenge. I threw my spear without respect. You caught it. That changed everything. She paused. I wanted to be angry, but you showed respect. You follow our ways. Even when you do not understand them, you fix what is broken. You listen before you speak. That is strength too. Darren looked at her carefully. You think I'm strong? She nodded. In a different way, you do not lead with force. You lead by heart. Darren stood up and looked at the training field again. Then fight. The people need you. I won't stop you. You do not fear losing the bond, she asked. I care more about what's right, Darren said. Raka stood beside him. Her eyes held something different now, respect, but also a quiet trust. I will fight, she said. Not because I must, because I choose. 2. That evening, word spread quickly through the village. Raka would fight again. The council called a meeting. Many villagers came to the fire circle to hear what had happened. The council elder, Voro, stood and raised his voice. The bond is not broken. The bond master has given permission. She will fight for the clan again. Some elders were uneasy, but many warriors cheered. Raka's return brought hope. Darren stood beside her as the crowd began to chant her name. He didn't smile, but his eyes showed calm. Later that night, Raka sharpened her spear while Darren worked on a small energy scanner. Near the fire, "Tomorrow we train together," she said. Darren looked up, surprised. "Train me? You are part of this clan now," she said. "If battle comes, you will not hide." Darren chuckled. "I'm not a warrior. You caught the spear," Raka reminded him. "That makes you one." The next morning, Raka trained. With the others again, she moved faster than anyone, her spear spinning like wind. She gave orders and led drills. The younger warriors watched her with wide eyes, copying every move. Darren stayed near the edge of the field, testing equipment, scanning for energy signals, and learning how the enemy might attack. He found old ground sensors buried in rocks and repaired them. He also helped build simple warning lights using parts from his shuttle pack. Soon, the village had early warning systems. Fires burned brighter, guards stood ready, morale rose. Even the council began to accept what had happened. The bond had changed, but it had not broken their strength. It had made them stronger. One night, while sitting near the fire, Darren asked Raka a question. "Why do your people respect bonds like this?" "It seems strange to me." Raka looked into the flames. "A bond formed by caught spear is rare. It means the paths have crossed by fate. It is not about power. It is about trust. We believe the one who catches the spear is chosen by the spirit of the warrior. It cannot be done by accident." Darren thought about that. "So the spirit chooses?" Raka nodded. "In a way." They sat in silence for a moment. "I don't know what fate had in mind," Darren said. "But I'm glad you're not my enemy." "I was never your enemy," Raka said. "Only your test." As dawn rose the next day, the mountain winds carried new sounds, horns from the east. The enemy clan had been spotted. The village prepared. Raka stood at the front, her spear ready. The people no longer whispered about her bond. They followed her. And beside her, with a tool belt instead of armor, stood Darren. He was no longer just a visitor. He was part of the flame. The horns from the east echoed across the stone hills. Villagers rushed to the walls. Warriors armed themselves. Children were moved to the caves. The wind carried the sound of drums. Deep and steady, the enemy clan was near. Raka stood at the front gate, her armor in place, her spear shining in the morning light. Her eyes were calm. She did not speak much, but every warrior watched her, waiting for her signal. Darren stood beside her, holding a small scanner and a tablet filled with maps. He had worked all night preparing defenses, using the satellite maps from his shuttle. He had marked every path the enemy could take. The place where the battle would happen was called the Seven Hills, a place of old battles, where the land dipped and rose like ocean waves made of stone. Raka turned to him. "Are you ready?" Darren took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." She gave him a small nod. "Then let us begin." They moved out with two groups of warriors, silent and fast. Darren stayed behind the front lines with a group of young fighters carrying tools and supplies. He placed sensors in the ground and connected them to warning lights. If the enemy stepped in certain places, the lights would flash red as the sun rose higher. They reached the Seven Hills. The ground here was uneven. Large rocks provided cover. Narrow paths ran between steep slopes. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Darren pointed to a narrow pass between two hills. "They'll come through here. This is the fastest path." Raka looked at the spot. "Then we set the trap here." She placed 10 warriors in hidden spots around the pass. Darren buried a device that could release a loud flash of light and sound. When triggered, it would confuse the enemy and give Raka's fighters time to strike. By midday, all was ready. Then the first scout from the enemy clan appeared. He wore dark armor and carried a black blade. He saw nothing unusual, but he turned and gave a signal. Behind him, a line of warriors followed. Raka raised her hand. Her warriors waited, hidden behind rocks. The enemy entered the pass. Darren pressed the trigger. A blast of light and sound filled the space. The enemy shouted in confusion. Some fell. Others raised their weapons. Raka gave the signal. Her warriors rose from behind the rocks and charged. Spears flew through the air. The enemy tried to fight back, but the narrow path worked against them. They had no room to move. Raka moved like wind, striking with perfect aim. Each step she took pushed the enemy back. Darren watched from above, guiding his side with signals. He used his scanner to find more enemy movement. On the far left hill, he saw 3 fighters trying to sneak around. He called to one of the young warriors beside him, "Take 2 and follow me. We need to stop them." They ran up the rocky path and reached the top. Darren held a light device in one hand and a shock baton in the other. He had never used it in real combat. The enemy fighters spotted them. Darren stepped forward. His hand shook, but he did not step back. The first fighter rushed at him. Darren ducked and hit the button. The baton sparked and struck the enemy's chest. The fighter fell back, stunned. The other 2 charged. The young warriors with Darren met them head on. Spears clashed. Dust flew. In the end, the enemy fell. Darren dropped to his knees, breathing hard. His arms ached. His hands were shaking. But they had won this hill. Down below, the main fight was almost over. The enemy had lost their ground. Some ran. Others dropped their weapons. Raka stood in the center of the pass. Her spear pointed at the last standing enemy. He dropped his blade and bowed. Raka gave a sharp whistle. Her warriors stopped. They did not chase the runners. The fight was done. The signal horn blew again. 3 long sounds. Victory. The warriors cheered. Darren walked down the hill slowly, dirt on his face, his shirt torn. Raka met him halfway. "You fought," she said. "I didn't have much choice," he replied, smiling. Weakly, "You had choice. You stayed. You led. You fought beside us. That matters more than strength." The villagers gathered around the returning warriors. The council members came forward. Voro, the elder, stepped into the circle and looked at Darren. "You helped win this battle," he said. "Without your maps, your lights, and your planning, we would have lost more." Darren shook his head. It was Raka who led them. Voro looked at Raka. "She is a fire that never dies. But even fire needs wind to rise higher. Today, you were that wind." The villagers clapped their hands together, their way of showing respect. Darren looked down, unsure of what to say. That evening, the fires in the village burned brighter than ever before. Food was shared. Songs were sung. Children laughed and danced. Raka sat beside Darren near the fire. She held her spear across her lap. "I still follow the bond," she said. "But now I do not carry it like a burden." Darren looked at her. "Then how do you carry it?" "As a choice," she said. "That is what makes it real." Darren did not speak. He only nodded. The battle had tested them both, and together they had passed. 3 days had passed since the Battle of 7 Hills. The village was safe. The enemy clan had not returned. Warriors repaired the walls. Elders gave thanks to the spirits. And the people spoke proudly of the victory. Darren had become more than a visitor. He was now seen as part of the clan. The children followed him around, curious about his tools. The warriors greeted him with respect. Even the quiet elders nodded when he passed, but not everyone was ready to accept him. One morning, the council called a gathering at the fire circle. Raka stood beside Darren as they stepped into the center. The wind was cold. Smoke from the fire curled into the sky. Voro, the elder, stood with his staff. "The bond between the outsider and our warrior has changed us," he said. "It brought strength. It brought victory. But law is still law." The crowd listened. Without a word, for an outsider to hold a warrior, Voro continued. "He must pass the judgment flame. It is our final test. It proves if the bond is worthy." Darren looked at Raka. She gave him a firm nod. He turned back to Voro. "What is the judgment flame?" Voro raised his staff. "It is a path through the fire caves. You must walk alone. Inside, you face your truth. If you lie, the flame will burn you. If you run, the bond breaks. If you pass, you become one of us." Darren's heart beat faster. "And if I fail, Raka will be free," Voro said. "But the shame will remain, and your name will be forgotten." Darren looked at the people. He had not come to become a hero. He had not wanted power, but he had made a promise, both to Raka and to himself. He could not walk away now. I'll take the test, he said. The next morning, before the sun rose, Darren stood at the entrance to the fire caves. The mouth of the cave glowed with soft red light. Warm air came from deep inside. Two guards stood at the entrance, but they said nothing. Raka walked with him to the edge. You do not have to be strong, she said. You only have to be honest. Darren nodded. That might be harder than it sounds. She looked into his eyes. Whatever you see in there, do not look away. He stepped inside. The cave was long and dark. The air grew hotter with every step. The walls glowed red from cracks in the stone. A narrow path led him deeper and deeper, until the light from the entrance disappeared behind him. Soon, he stood before a wide chamber. Flames burned along the walls, but there was no smoke. In the center stood a circle of stones. He stepped into it. Suddenly, the air shifted. Voices began to echo in the cave, but they were not from outside. They were from inside his own mind. You don't belong here, said one voice. You're not a warrior. You're weak, said another. You fix machines, not people. You didn't mean to catch the spear, said a third. It was luck, nothing more. Darren dropped to one knee. The heat was heavy. His breath came slow and hard. He closed his eyes and saw himself back on the space station, working in silence. No one listened to him. No one knew his name. He was just one more technician, replaceable, invisible. He saw the faces of his old team. He had always stayed behind. Others went on missions. He stayed and waited. Now, he was on a world full of warriors, leaders, and ancient laws, and he was holding the bond of their best fighter. Who are you really? The voice asked. Darren opened his eyes. The flames moved like they were alive, watching him. I don't know, he whispered. The fire roared. But I know this, he said, louder now. I came here with no plan. I caught a spear I never saw coming. I made mistakes. I felt fear. But I stayed. I helped. I listened. I didn't run. The fire burned brighter. I didn't ask for this bond. But I will protect it. Not because I want control. Because I respect it. The ground shook. The flames rose higher. I may not be a warrior, Darren said, but I will not be a coward. The flames burst into white light and then silence. The air cooled. The heat faded. The path behind him began to glow softly, showing the way out. Darren stood slowly, his body tired, his heart steady. He walked back through the tunnel, step by step. When he reached the cave entrance, the whole village was waiting. Raka stood at the front. Her eyes searched his face. Darren stepped out of the cave, eyes red from smoke and light. But his steps were strong. Vora raised his staff. He has passed. The crowd let out a breath. Hands clapped together. Raka stepped forward and placed her hand on his chest, just above his heart. You carry the flame now, she said. I carry it with honor, Darren replied. The council gave him a new necklace, made of dark stone and a single red crystal. It was worn only by those who passed the judgment flame. That night, the fire in the village burned higher than any before. Raka stood beside Darren, not as a servant, not as a protector, but as an equal. She had chosen to follow him. Now he had chosen to be worthy of it. The sun set slowly over Euro Station, casting long shadows across the trade district. The usual hum of machines mixed with soft music and laughter. The market stalls were decorated with colorful lights. The air smelled of fresh food and sweet spices. It was a night of celebration. Today was special. The station had faced a great danger, but it had survived. Nari's quick thinking and skillful hands had saved many lives. The station leaders decided to honor her with a gathering, a celebration of her courage and strength. Nari stood near the entrance of her small repair shop. Her hands were trembling slightly. She wore a simple dress made from soft blue fabric, the color of her skin. It was the first time she had dressed up for such an event. She looked at her reflection in a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. She barely recognized herself. Her heart beat fast. Are you ready? Tom's voice broke the silence. Nari turned. Tom stood by the door, dressed in a neat shirt and trousers. He smiled warmly. As ready as I'll ever be, she said. Tom offered his arm. Nari hesitated, but then took it. Together, they walked out. The station was alive with excitement. Aliens of all shapes and sizes gathered in the central plaza. Many faces were familiar traders, engineers, dock workers. Some tall and strong, others small and quiet. But tonight, they all looked toward one person. A tall figure approached with a small group of officials. It was the station captain, a proud and serious woman named Lyra. She stopped in front of Nari and Tom. "Welcome, everyone," Lyra said, her voice clear and strong. "Tonight, we honor a hero, a small figure with a giant heart." The crowd cheered softly. Lyra turned to Nari. "You saved this station when we needed you most. Your courage, your skill, and your kindness showed us that greatness is not measured by size but by the strength inside." Nari's cheeks warmed. She looked at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. Lyra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small medal. It was simple but elegant, a shining silver gear with a glowing blue center. "For your service and bravery," Lyra said, placing the medal around Nari's neck. The crowd erupted in applause. Nari felt the weight of the medal. It was more than medal. It was respect. It was acceptance. After the official words, the music grew louder. People began to dance and celebrate. Traders offered food and drinks. Children ran through the plaza, laughing. Tom pulled Nari gently toward a table filled with treats. "Try this," he said, offering a sweet fruit from Earth. She took a bite and smiled. The taste was familiar now, comforting. As the night went on, Nari noticed many people coming to her. Some said simple thanks. Others asked questions about her work. A few even wanted to learn from her. She answered each one with a quiet smile. At one point, a group of tall engineers approached. One of them, a man named Heron, spoke up. "You did amazing work," Heron said. "Maybe you could help us with the new engine project." Nari blinked. "I would like that." Tom watched from a distance, pride shining in his eyes. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Nari and Tom found a quiet spot under a dome of stars. The station lights dimmed, and the sky above shone bright with distant suns. Tom took Nari's hand carefully. "You were amazing tonight," he said softly. Nari looked down. "I was scared." Tom shook his head. "You don't have to be." "Not with me." She smiled, a true smile, free and bright. "I thought I was too small," she said. "Too quiet, too simple." Tom's eyes met hers. "Your heart is bigger than anyone here." Nari squeezed his hand. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. Not just in the station, not just in the galaxy, but here with him. The night grew late. The music faded. The people returned to their homes and ships. But Nari and Tom stayed under the stars. Two small figures in a vast universe, connected by something greater than size or space. They sat close, sharing stories and dreams. And for Nari, the world felt a little bigger, a little warmer, and full of hope. Days passed since the celebration. Eurostation returned to its usual rhythm. Ships arrived and left. Traders shouted their offers. Machines hummed and clicked in workshops. But for Nari, everything had changed. She woke each morning with a quiet hope in her chest. She looked forward to seeing Tom, to sharing moments in her little repair shop, to building something new, not just machines, but a future. One morning, Tom arrived with a surprise. "I have an idea," he said, holding a small device. "It's a communication beacon. I want to build one here, so people across the galaxy can send messages, share stories, and connect." Nari's eyes brightened. "That's wonderful." Together, they unpacked tools and parts. They worked side by side, fitting pieces and checking wires. The beacon grew slowly, a small tower of lights and circuits. Neighbors stopped by, curious and excited. Some brought supplies. Others offered advice. The project became a station effort, a symbol of hope. At night, when the beacon glowed softly, Nari and Tom would sit nearby. One evening, Tom looked at Nari with quiet eyes. "You know," he said, "I once thought love was for people bigger and stronger, for those who could fight wars or command ships." Nari smiled. "I thought love was for those who looked a certain way, Tom shook his head. But you showed me it's about something else. It's about kindness, about courage, about the heart. Nari reached for his hand. I never thought I could feel this way. But now, I do. The beacon pulsed gently as if listening. Their hands stayed joined. Life on Eurostation was not easy. There were challenges still. Times when doubts crept in. But together, they faced each one. The small alien and the human pilot had found more than friendship. They found trust. In a universe so big and wide, that was the greatest gift of all. One afternoon, as the station glowed under twin suns, Nari stood before the beacon. She pressed a button, sending a message out into space. Her voice was calm and clear. To anyone who feels small or unseen, know this: your heart is bigger than you think. You belong. You are important. Tom stood beside her, smiling. The message traveled far, carried by light and hope. And for Nari, the tiny alien who once believed she was too small for love, the galaxy now felt full of endless possibilities because her heart was seen, her kindness mattered, and she was loved.